Imagine being so feared that your neighbors cross the street when they see you. Imagine having so much power that a single movement could end a fight before it even begins. But also, imagine choosing not to use it. That was the life of Kanbun Uechi, a man who fled war, learned how to kill, and then dedicated his life to teaching how not to. This is the story of the silent master of Okinawa, the man who founded Uechi-Ryu and forever transformed karate, martial might, where warriors live forever. Kanbun Uechi was born on May 5, 1877, in the village of Izumi, on the island of Okinawa, Japan. He was a strong, hard-working, and disciplined young man, like many in his community, but what set him apart wasn't his strength, it was his spirit. At 19, something happened that changed his destiny forever. Japan enforced mandatory military service, and Kanbun, a deeply pacifist man, refused to take up arms to kill another human being. To avoid being drafted, he made a radical decision. He left his homeland and traveled to China. No one knew if he would ever return. He arrived in the Fujian province in southern China, where he began a spiritual and martial quest that led him to the Pangai-noon temple. There, he met a master who would change his life, Zhou Zihei, also known as Shu Shiwa. Zhou did not accept students easily. For months, Kanbun swept, cooked, and cleaned without receiving a single lesson. But one day, Zhou tested him, and Kanbun responded with a ferocity and discipline that even surprised the master. Thus began a 10-year training journey. 10 years of pain, endless repetitions, striking the makiwara until he bled, and studying a lethal style, Pangai-noon, an art based on 3 animals, the tiger, the dragon, and the crane. Strength, internal power, and evasive speed. Kanbun mastered all 3. But in China, he didn't just learn how to fight, he learned how to master his ego. During his time there, he opened his own dojo and taught the art to a select few. One of his students became involved in a street fight that ended with the death of an opponent. Although Kanbun wasn't present, guilt consumed him. Disheartened, he closed his school and vowed never to teach martial arts again. He returned to Okinawa in 1910, after 13 years in exile. But the world had changed. War, nationalism, and karate were spreading throughout Japan. Kanbun, true to his vow, remained silent. He worked as a farmer. He distanced himself from combat, but his reputation had preceded him. In 1924, now living in Wakayama, Japan, where he had moved in search of work, a persistent young man would change his course. His name was Ryu Tomoyose. Day after day, he begged Kanbun to train him. Kanbun refused. But Tomoyose did not give up. He showed up for 100 consecutive days without missing a single one. Eventually, Uechi agreed. That marked the rebirth of the art. Kanbun began secretly teaching Pangai-noon in a small dojo in Wakayama's industrial district, and thus, without intending to, he gave birth to one of the toughest and most authentic styles of modern karate, Uechi-Ryu. The training was brutal. It wasn't just about striking. It was about conditioning the body to withstand the unimaginable. Blows to the abdomen, iron fists, bare-handed blocking. Students left the dojo covered in bruises, but with hearts strengthened. Kanbun was a meticulous master. He didn't speak much, but when he did, everyone listened. In 1932, his son, Kanbun Uechi, began training under his guidance. At first, Kanbun resisted. He didn't want his son to follow the path of combat. But Kanbun showed the same determination Kanbun had shown to Shu Shiwa. In time, Kanbun would become the figure that carried Uechi-Ryu across the world. But before that, Kanbun still had much to teach. One of his most remembered moments occurred during a public demonstration in Wakayama. They asked him to showcase his art. He refused, but later, a young fighter tried to challenge him in private. Kanbun invited him to strike first. With a single defense, he put the young man on the ground without throwing a single offensive blow. That was his philosophy. Maximum effectiveness, minimum aggression. In 1940, Kanbun Uechi returned to Okinawa for good. He was already an old man, but he continued to train, he continued to observe, and he continued to teach quietly to those who proved themselves worthy. He died on November 25th, 1948, at the age of 71. He left very few direct students, but he left an indelible legacy. Uechi-Ryu, a style that combines the brutality of southern China with the spiritual serenity of Okinawa, became one of the most respected styles in the world. Today, it is practiced in more than 30 countries, and in every kata, every movement, every exhalation, there's an echo of his voice. Kanbun Uechi did not seek fame. He did not seek applause. He only sought justice, respect, and balance. Uechi-Ryu is not a karate to show off. It is an art of survival, a way to build character, a way to say with your body, I am prepared, but I won't harm you unless you leave me no choice. Because that was Kanbun Uechi, firm, silent, unstoppable. And now, let's talk about what he left beyond the strikes, about what cannot be seen, but transforms everything. Because Kanbun's legacy is not just Uechi-Ryu as a technique, it's his vision of combat as a way of life. To him, karate wasn't a sport. It was a spiritual discipline, a way to temper the character, master the ego, and live with honor. Each kata was meditation in motion, each breath a lesson in patience, each block a moral decision. Do I really need to strike back? He didn't aim to form tournament champions. He aimed to form men capable of controlling their strength and living righteously. That's why his teachings were simple, yet profound. The art of the fist is not for initiating. It is for ending when there is no other way. Kanbun never spoke of winning. He spoke of enduring, staying calm, hardening the body to soften the heart. And he passed this on not only to his son, but to generations of practitioners. Many students remember that after hours of physical training came the hardest part, silence, to sit down, close the eyes, and empty the mind. Because a warrior who cannot master his inner world will never master the outer one. That's why, in Uechi-Ryu, it's not just the arms that grow strong, it's the spirit. Today, the dojos that follow his style still teach that philosophy, to avoid seeking fights, to use strength only as a last resort, to respect even the enemy. And that, in a world that increasingly values immediacy, superficiality, and violence, is a lesson worth gold. Kanbun Uechi was a man who knew violence, but chose restraint, who learned to hurt, but chose to heal, who could have been feared, but chose to be respected. That's why over a century later his name is not shouted, it is honored. And every time a student bows in a dojo, breathes deeply, and performs a kata with serenity, Kanbun lives on, not in books, but in a firm stance, a calm gaze, and the decision to use strength only when the heart allows it. That is the true power of Uechi-Ryu, and that is the true legacy of Kanbun Uechi.